Radio Free Asia, 3rd of February 2023, China's approaches to intimidate while luring with money. During the Trump administration, Keith Krach served as the Undersecretary of State for Environment, Energy, and Economic Development. The Clean Network Alliance of Democracies, an international initiative led by the United States to address long-term risks to data privacy, security, human rights, and cooperation from authoritarian powers, was developed and put into place under his supervision. He was the first American diplomat to describe China's treatment of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang as genocide in July 2020. At age 65, Krach is the director of the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, a nonpartisan, independent think tank with a Washington, D.C., base that combines technology and international policy. Alim Seytoff of Radio Free Asia's Uyghur station was recently in conversation with him. To make the interview shorter and more precise, it has been edited. RFA, you reposted an opinion essay about the Uyghur genocide on January 27, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. What does it mean to additionally recognize the ongoing genocide against the Uyghur people on this day? Krach, about Uyghurs and other minority communities, Communist China is committing genocide that is criminal under United Nations law in Xinjiang and elsewhere. It's essential to remember this genuinely, but it's also necessary to act on it rather than place it and talk about it. As chairman of the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy, we are carrying on many initiatives I started as an undersecretary of state. No one wanted to face another genocide after the Holocaust. Therefore the international community coined the term never again. But it repeatedly occurred, in Rwanda, Darfur, and Myanmar with the Rohingya, and it continues to happen with the Uyghurs. Is the expression never again only a catchphrase, or does it have any meaning in international relations? Krach, the entire society must work together to ensure that it is more than just a catchphrase. When I was in charge of U.S. economic diplomacy, I discovered that our wonderful democracy and the liberties we enjoy are artificial because the terrible monarch, the tyrant, and the emperor make up the natural order of things. You have to fight for democracy every day because genocide is a real possibility under that kind of authoritarian leadership. I have a great deal of respect for both the American people and the government because of this. Despite a lot of the domestic political drama, these men are professionals, and we need to focus on that. However, it involves all of society. In terms of our struggle against the Uyghur genocide, that was the main focus. I frequently served as the CEO of a publicly traded firm and the chairman of the board of trustees at Purdue University, but I was unaware of this. I frequently served as the CEO of a publicly traded firm and the chairman of the board of trustees at Purdue University, but I was unaware of this. I appeared on national television, in 2020, and became the first government representative to classify Xinjiang human rights violations as acts of genocide formally. I then informed them of the situation in a letter I sent to all CEOs, university governing boards, and civil society leaders in the United States. Therefore, educating people is the first step, but taking action is the next. At that point, I urged them to review their supply chains for evidence of forced labor and to withdraw from any Chinese firms that support the violations of Xinjiang citizens' human rights. RFA, when you were the Undersecretary of State, you warned numerous American businesses doing business with China about the risks and perils of potentially being involved in the genocide and forced labor of Uyghurs. Do you believe that was successful? Krach, a lot of boards of directors were alerted. In my opinion, their moral and fiduciary duty was to ensure that they did not support human rights violations. Making your China contingency plan at the following board meeting was the advice I gave in a piece I wrote for Fortune magazine in April. I now observe from well-known board members in the United States, Europe, and Japan that they are creating China contingency plans because they recognize the genocide being committed by Xi Jinping, and the fact that he is repressing the private sector. They are making backup plans since they notice that he has increased his aggressiveness toward Taiwan and the possibility of an invasion. These businesses are wary of repeating the costly experience of leaving Russia after a brutal, unjustified invasion cost them hundreds of billions of dollars. So, it's being talked about, and many businesses are standing up, but there's still a long way to go. RFA, Chinese Vice Premier Liu He said that China is now open for business and that the West should give up its Cold War attitude at the World Economic Forum in January. He also met separately with Janet Yellen, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and extended an invitation for her to travel to the nation. Now that the COVID lockdowns are over, Wall Street has a lot of enthusiasm as many firms want to invest in China. Given the ongoing genocide and the heartbreaking accounts of people who lost their lives due to the stringent zero-COVID policy, how should we interpret this? Krach, we are lighting the light of transparency on China as one of our major initiatives, but we must also reflect that transparency on ourselves. You mentioned the World Economic Forum. I've attended for 20 years. This is the leading social responsibility-related gathering of businesses and governments. I read over the webpage often before writing last year's op-ed. It's a complicated, comprehensive website, and I couldn't locate any information on the Xinjiang genocide or Uyghurs anywhere. That demonstrates their internal conflict. China uses a combination of financial seduction, intimidation, and retaliation to strengthen its position. They don't even discuss human rights in this famous forum. That seems somewhat hypocritical right now. You mentioned Wall Street. We recently completed a case study on solar and ESG, environmental, social, and governance standards, which revealed that 90% of the solar industry is manufactured in Xinjiang using slave labor from Uyghurs and the two largest unregulated coal-powered plants in the world. In that case study, one of the topics we discuss is a business called BlackRock, which has been funding these Chinese organizations that support the surveillance state and the genocide. As a result, we're making every effort to expose these corporations, and people are starting to take action. The best way to accomplish that is to mobilize the entire society in Xinjiang and ring the cash register. Many Uyghurs, particularly those living in exile, believe that the genocide has no end in sight. In Chinese internment camps, many people have been detained, gone missing, or passed away. Their loved ones are not in contact with them. What should the American government or other Western countries do to stop the genocide? Krach, when we established the Clean Network Alliance of Democracies to counter China's grand scheme to dominate 5G, it was a rally that brought together like-minded countries because it has a powerful voice. Nations like the Czech Republic and France share our conviction that genocide is a crime. That is the initial action. The private sector's ingenuity and resources must be utilized, which is another critical factor. There is a ton of pressure on these companies exploiting forced labor in their supply chains, and will keep applying it. The commercial aspect is crucial since those companies have legal and reputational repercussions. Universities are significant since they have substantial endowment monies, and because they are committed to academic freedom and human rights, we can exert pressure on them. We must therefore mobilize such people as well. Concerning the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, Congress has started to take action. The most important lesson I took away from the government was that everything revolves around their implementation after these bills are approved. And that's where every citizen needs to continue applying pressure to get these laws implemented.